Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys, fellow INFJs, fellow non-INFJs. As always, thank you very much for your time and attention in watching my videos. This, in fact, might be the last video I record in this room, so who knows what will happen. It's also the second video I record in a row, so hopefully it won't be too tired. I tend to become a little bit phlegmatic, It's kind of my natural self, and in videos I tend to play up how dynamic I can be, and apparently not that successfully, but anyway, so hopefully I will be in good enough form. I wanted to share some observations on the constitutional makeup of the INFJ, whether it be in terms of functions or other things, and these thoughts were sparked by the fact that, in fact, in a little over 2 hours, just a little over 2 hours, I'm going to be doing an interview with Joyce Meng, right? Which I'm sure a lot of you know. She's really, really good. Joyce, very, very keen observer and commentator and analyst of personality types. And she's also really, really good, it's something that really needs to be pointed out, is that in my book, The Ecstatic Soul, which I'll tell you about in a second, I talk about the vocational INFJs that tend to realize the vision by bringing people together around a project. And that's exactly what Joyce is doing. So let's take a moment to appreciate that is a concrete example of it happening, okay? Bringing INFJs together, bringing other people from other types together to have conversations, to enrich our discourse, our vocabulary around type, and contributing to our community remaining vibrant and becoming more vibrant. Now, this interview is meant to be just a 1-minute video. And what Joyce suggested we do is, it's like the INFJ psychological makeup, the cognitive function stack in 1 minute. So hope you do a really interesting exercise, because it's obviously going to be very fast paced. I have like 15 seconds, 4 times 15 seconds to talk about the 4 functions, and not just to describe how the 4 functions are manifested internally in the INFJ, but also how they manifest externally in the INFJ, and how it comes across in society. So obviously it has to be hyper condensed. Won't be able to tackle everything at once. We'll have to focus on the higher level stuff. Now, it's an interesting exercise, and it's always a pleasure to chat with Joyce. But at the same time, it sparks some thoughts in my head about this whole idea of describing the INFJ in a very short amount of time by focusing on the cognitive functions of the INFJ. Something I've done before, and no issues with that as such necessarily. But I think there's room for further commentary here in terms of the kinds of rich descriptions that we can provide of the INFJ. Now, I cannot link this video now because it's not been recorded yet, but I link you to Joyce's channel in case you don't know it yet, because it's really worth discovering, and you'll see that I don't know when she will release the video, but you'll see it there eventually. Now, before I move on, you thought you were going to escape from it, but come on, it's my last video in this room. I can't, apart from the interview with Joyce, which will also be in this room. Anyway, The Ecstatic Soul, my book on the INFJ. If you haven't got it, ebook, paperback format, links below. Get a copy for yourself. Less than $10, and you'll know a lot more about the INFJ after you've read this book, trust me. You might also know more about the INFJ after you read this book, even though it is a book of fiction. It's inspired by Kafka, Murakami, Dostoevsky, Camus, so it's like this intersection between magical realism, existentialism, absurdism, modernism. But a lot of people who've read it have seen the main character as an INFJ, alienated INFJ, so it could also be interpreted as a fictional exploration of the condition of the INFJ in the modern world, the infinite castle. All really supports the channel, if you get my stuff, and it could be good reading for you. You can also support me on Patreon, and my Patreon page, it's a small but growing community. If you want to have more access to me, talk to me more directly, potentially get me to type you or the kind of INFJ that you are. And you can also ask, I answer 1 question per week, at least that's my goal, in video for every user that asks a question. So, it's worth joining, link below. And it really massively supports me in these uncertain times for me, in my newly married life, changing jobs, etc., so on and so forth. So really appreciate my supporters and considerates. Now, listen, it is very convenient to just take the INFJ, look at their cognitive function stack, and say, okay, this is how NI manifests. And I'm going to talk about that with Joyce. How this is how FE manifests. This is how TI manifests. This is how SE manifests. And you sort of look at the different You just look at the qualitatively at what the different functions do, and you combine that with the placement in the stack to basically, so input all this detail, and the output will be, well, okay, this is how this function manifests. So NI dominant manifests like this, FE auxiliary manifests like that. And you get this picture of the INFJ. You can also, it's true, supplement that with examples from everyday life. This is how NI manifests an INFJ in particular situation, or FE, or inferior, SE, or TI. This is how the NI-TI loop can manifest. You can get to quite fine degree of detail, and that's good in itself. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but maybe in typical INFJ fashion, because holism, I think, is something that INFJs are by definition very attracted to, as opposed to atomism. And I think that I've made videos on that certainly before, at least one, perhaps two, perhaps more. Holism, the idea that things are holistic wholes, the world is a holistic whole, all the parts fit together in a way that organically makes sense. It's not just atomistic parts like different cognitive functions that then you aggregate together, somehow creates the INFJ. No, it doesn't work like that. So let's always keep in mind that when we provide a description of ourselves as INFJs or other INFJs or the INFJ as an ideal type, everything that an INFJ does, and everything that an INFJ experiences, this is strongly my belief at this point, is not a collection of different cognitive experiences and cognitive events and decisions linked to a function here or a function there. No matter how precisely you describe the function and how precisely you link it with their particular slot in the function stack, in the hierarchy. Everything that an INFJ does at any particular moment, or that an INFP does, an ISTJ does at any particular moment, is a product of all the functions taken holistically together, right? Of course, I'm not talking about me kind of grabbing my glass and drinking from it, but any complex action, any complex thought, any complex experience, which there's loads of constantly happening in our mind, is not just going to be an I. It's not just going to be SE. It's always going to be some kind of complex and deeply layered interaction of the four functions together. And even in the NI-TI looping of the INFJ is impacted by the absence of the involvement of the more extroverted functions. But by their absence, these functions are already heavily impacting the nature of the looping. So always think that the functions go together, and always try to think that when you're trying to describe qualitatively a particular context or a particular action, particular mode of behavior of an INFJ, it has to be understood always through the prism of how the function interacts, and not just one function here, one function there. It's true that for the purpose sometimes of explanation, we have to use these shortcuts because they're not false, they really greatly simplify the truth, and we can't always aim for this maximal level of nuanced layered detail, to provide any kind of explanation. Sometimes we have to use shortcuts to say, it's my NI who did this, it's my FE who did that, it's my SE. That's okay, so long as we remain aware of one thing, is that when we're doing this, we're speaking in ordinary language conversations. So we need to be able to operate at a level that we can respond quickly to people, that we can actually speak in a way that people can respond to, and not always as if we were writing an essay to people, or like a book of philosophy, or whatever it is, or even a highly qualitative, detailed, rich, borderline fictional description, or great writer's description of the way the INFJ is. That, you can do that in books, you can do that in essays. And I know that some in my audience are starting to toy more and more with the idea of writing books and maybe starting channels, which I think is great. And that can provide a channel, or, at least a venue for these richer descriptions. Completely understand that you would zero in on this function, that function, to explain what you're doing, to explain how you're reacting. But so long as you keep in mind, that's because you're speaking in a particular register at that moment, which is ordinary language conversations. At a slightly higher level, less conventional, more precise, more qualitative, there's always an interaction. There's always an interaction. We're dynamic, holistic wholes. And sometimes the adoration that some people seem to feel for NI, for example, or for TI, or for SE, or whatever, can lead to a certain atomization of how people speak about type and identify with their type. We have to guard against it. And that's all that I wanted to share with you now. So I wish you an excellent rest of the day. Don't forget about my Patreon page. It really helps, and it's really quite cheap. Link below. See you next time. Bye-bye, guys.